We are continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series. Today we're taking a look at the 19th best team from the regular season, the Calgary Flames. What moves will we expect them to make through trades and free agency this offseason? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're continuing our NHL offseason plan series where we're doing a dedicated video for all 31 NHL teams. We started at the 31st ranked team in the NHL from the past season, the Detroit Red Wings, and we're working our way all the way up till we get to number one to see what to expect from these teams as they enter the full-scale offseason. Of course, as we know, we're down to two teams in the NHL right now battling out for the Stanley Cup, Dallas and Tampa. Everybody else's offseason technically is underway. We've seen a little bit of activity when it comes to trades. Free agency still a few weeks away, so let's jump in here first and recap what the season was like for Calgary last year. Take a look at their cap space, expiring contracts, and take a look at the most burning questions and what needs they have to look after this offseason. So as you can see, the Calgary Flames finished with a record of 36, 27, and 7 for 79 points. Overall, they did technically qualify for the Stanley Cup Playoffs. They were a part of the 24-team NHL Return to Play playoff bubble. They did defeat the Winnipeg Jets in the qualifying series, so technically they made the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Now, of course, after beating the Winnipeg Jets, it didn't get much further, but still, they had another showing here where they could at least get into the playoffs, but still, lack of playoff success could cause some pretty serious change as this team has been on the cusp of doing some greater things for a few years now and have yet to really make any significant achievements. Now, let's take a look at their cap space that they have right now and what expiring contracts are either going to have to be re-signed or replaced for the coming year. Now, as you can see, courtesy of CapFriendly.com, as of right now, the Flames have $16.9 million in available salary cap space. They also have 14 players under contract for next season as well. So normally you carry a roster of 22 to 23 players. So that means that they have anywhere from 8 to 9 players that they're going to have to sign with that limited amount of $16.9 million. And obviously a lot of those contracts are not going to be able to be overly expensive, but we could see some shakeup here in the roster, which we'll get into in a few moments. Now, let's take a look now at what contracts are expiring. What do they have for restricted and unrestricted free agents when we hit October? Now, as you can see, the list of restricted free agents isn't too bad, not too long, but the list of UFAs are certainly quite long, and they're going to have a lot of tough decisions to make. Looking at the RFAs first, we have Andrew Mangiapane, we have Mark Jankowski, and Oliver Shillington. Now, Mangiapane, I think, will definitely get a new deal. I don't see that being too long or too expensive, but he has proven himself as a way to be a regular NHL player, so I fully suspect that he will be brought back. In the case of Mark Jankowski, he really didn't have a great year. The last couple of years, really, in my opinion, haven't been great for Jankowski. I would not be shocked to see him either not be qualified and become an unrestricted free agent or possibly be moved if they're able to find a deal for him. But I do see a scenario, and whether it be in a couple of different ways, that Jankowski's not brought back for next year. Now, in the case of Oliver Shillington, I can see him getting a contract and carrying on. He's actually been a decent player for them as well. So I can see 2 out of 3 of those RFAs getting deals and getting signed, and they're not kind of the contracts that are going to be overly long or expensive. Now, looking at the list of UFAs, like I said, it's quite long, and they're going to have some hard decisions to make, and they're going to have a lot of players to either sign or replace here. They have goaltender Cam Talbot, who for the most part was kind of looked upon as being the backup, but really proved to be the starter. Played majority of the playoff games with David Riddick sitting on the bench. So Talbot kind of proved that he can still play at a higher level. Of course, he's going to be looking for an opportunity next year to be a starting goaltender. I think whether he re-signs in Calgary or goes elsewhere, he's one of many NHL goaltenders on what I'm calling the goaltender carousel. It's going to be an extremely active goaltender market. And I've said in other videos, I think we're going to have 20-plus teams have a different goaltending tandem, either their starter or backup, next year than they had for the current season. So there's going to be a lot of activity. Talbot will be one of them getting a new deal. Whether it's in Calgary or not is difficult to say because the Flames are also rumored to be in the mix, looking at goalies like Matt Murray and Darcy Kuemper as well. Now we've also got some defense questions here, including Travis Hamonic, TJ Brodie, as well as Eric Gustafson, Michael Stone, and Derek Forward. I mean, there's a lot of D there that's unrestricted free agents right now, and it's difficult to say how many or if any of them will be back. I think it's fair to say that between Hamonic and Brodie, at least one of them leaves likely. I mean, it's possible they could try to keep one. I don't think there's been much talks with Gustafson at this point. I know last year Michael Stone was bought out and re-signed, so I'd say it's doubtful he returns. Forward, maybe. It's, again, hard to say, but as of right now, they don't have a lot of answers for that blue line. They got Mark Giordano, they got Noah Hannafin, you've got Rasmus Anderson, hopefully a healthy use of Valimaki, but they do need a couple more. So depending on if they bring any of these guys back, will determine if they dip into free agency or trade. But again, I think that it is quite possible they're going to explore their options of what else is out there before they bring back any of these players. But I would say possibly, depending on the money, that either Hamonic or Brodie comes back, but likely not both. Now, we also have a couple of forwards, and Zach Rinaldo and Toby Reeder. Again, difficult to say if they come back. I mean, it is possible, but I give it maybe 50%. I mean, Toby Reeder certainly did better than he did the previous season, so he, might have a case, but hard to say. Again, it's going to depend on what overall options are out there and boils down to money as well. Now let's take a look at what we're calling the burning questions for the Flames heading into the offseason. Besides those contracts, what are the big holes in their lineup? What areas do they really need to focus on through trade and free agency? Now, one of the big items that they needed to focus on, they've already answered, and that's who's going to be the head coach. We finally get confirmation just in the past few days that Jeff Ward, who's been the interim head coach, is now the official full-time head coach, got a 2-year contract extension. So obviously GM Brad Treliving was happy enough with his efforts that he's going to keep him on here at least for a couple of years. So at least they've answered that question. I know they had to let Bill Peters go. Obviously it had a difficult situation for the Flames to deal with last season, which was very unfortunate. But Ward did do a pretty good job in the regular season. And again, we've seen a case of the Flames not have a ton of playoff success. They did good in the qualifying round against Winnipeg, but Winnipeg also was battered up quite a bit and had Mark Scheifele go out in Game 1. I've said before, I think that would have been a closer series, and the Jets would have had a much better chance to win should they been able to stay healthy. So in the case of Calgary, though, like I said, they've had a number of coaches now with this core group of players, and they still don't have the playoff success. So the next burning question is, do they break up this core? Do we see a significant trade? A Johnny Gaudreau, a Sean Monahan? Would they consider moving a captain like Mark Giordano? I mean, I think a couple of guys that are probably safe would be guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Elias Lindholm. I think we're fair to say Tkachuk is kind of taken over being the leader of this team. Giordano likely doesn't go anywhere either. He has 1 year left on his contract. And he's still done okay, but I don't think he had a great playoff. He didn't look to be all that great, especially once they get into the first round after the qualifying round. So, again, I think there's quite a possibility, but no guarantee, that we see either Monahan or Gaudreau, maybe even both, possibly be traded. But again, it's going to be not an easy task to do. They need to have a comparable player, something coming back to play top-line minutes. If you take them out of the equation, as much as they haven't had that playoff success, who's going to take over their spots? So, obviously, they have options out there. There's lots of names on the trade market right now. They're in the rumor mill about getting a goaltender, maybe going after a big blue liner, but all kinds of questions. And so far, we don't know a lot of their intentions here just yet. But could one of those players be moved? I think it's more likely now than it ever has been. That's for sure. As I mentioned during the contract segment, they have some holes in the blue line. They have a lot of UFA defensemen. Who comes back? Who goes? Like I said, personally, I think that there's a pretty good chance that maybe one at most if Hamonic or Brodie comes back. The other guys, I think there's a pretty good chance they all depart via free agency, and maybe they pick up another veteran, cheaper contract blue liner through free agency or trade. But that's probably the best case scenario for them. But at the end of the day, they don't have a ton of space, and if they want to shake things up within that core, it's going to depend on what goes or what comes back, because their cap space could be altered a bit depending on what other trades they decide to go down. But obviously, like I said, another big one as well is goaltending. Do they run with Talbot and Riddick here again? Do they consider making a trade for a goalie? Like I said, there's so many goaltenders available. They have a lot of questions. We could end up seeing next year the Flames with a different tandem and be between the pipes. a fairly different looking blue line with at least a couple of new faces? And could we see either Gaudreau or Monahan, a big significant trade to really shake things up? Like I said, it's a lot of questions, not a lot of answers here just yet. We're going to see what GM Brad Treliving does. I would not be shocked, though, at the same time, if they decide to say that, you know what, even though they had, certainly playoff blunders in the past, this year's was such a unique scenario with a long layoff, and then obviously coming back into the bubble system. Like, it was such a unique beast that I'm not sure that too many GMs are going to panic over it because they didn't have that, the success they were hoping for. So we might be getting another year of Gaudreau and Monahan and company to try to have some success before things really shake up. But I'm sure the market's being explored. Just a matter of what the options are out there when they're talking trade with other general managers. So let me know what moves you expect the Flames to make during this offseason, and we will discuss further down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.